Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the QKZ X HBB Hades, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Linsoul Audio for providing the Hades for review. To greatly appreciate it, Linsoul Audio, you rock. Alright, so the QKZ X HBB Hades. This is a collaboration between QKZ and HBB, or Hawaii Bad Boy, also known as Bad Guy Good Audio Reviews. Check out the link down below for a link to his YouTube channel. So the Hades is on pre-order on Linsoul Audio. It is a dual driver configuration that has two 9mm dynamic drivers, 16 ohms of impedance, 95 decibels sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz. The Hades comes in this white box. You get a bunch of cartoonish type of stuff on the front here. And then it says QKZ HBB Hades. And then you get some more information here on the back. And oh, we have a high-res sticker. It's got to sound good. And then on the other side you have some specs. Taking off the sleeve, and you're greeted by a black box with this logo. And then you open it up and you have an area for some accessories. Those accessories include a collection, a coin, why? All right, and then you get a bag with small, medium, and large silicone tips. I did use the silicone tips included. And then you get this little carrying case, which just opens up. And I mean, it'll protect your Hades. And then you get the Hades. And let's talk about the cable since I have to untangle it. This cable is very cheap and not very good. I was not impressed by this cable whatsoever. It tangles pretty much every single time that you open up your IEMs. Connects with 2-pin. You have a red and blue indicators for right and left. The ear hooks are extremely aggressive. They loop around. It's extremely thin. You can get it with an inline mic if you want. And then it terminates into a 3.5. Very cheap filling cable. And it's just not a very good cable. All right, the Hades themselves, they're kind of cool looking. Plastic build. They kind of feel cheap, but they're all right. Like the faceplate, bluish tint with some transparency going on. You can kind of see on the inside. It's kind of cool looking. They're rather thick. You have a little bit of a very subtle wing on the back here with it's pretty much smooth. And then you have a decent angle and nozzle. The Hades I find to be fairly comfortable. It's not anything special here, but they just kind of go in your ear and disappear. I can wear them for about an hour, hour and a half before they become uncomfortable. Isolation of outside noises is not really that good. They will probably somewhere in about 50% of outside noises being blocked. Anything on the inside like TVs, loud kids, vacuum cleaners, things like that, you're definitely going to hear. And then walking around the neighborhood, pretty much any cars going around, you're going to hear it. To carry on a conversation, just pause your music and you can carry on a conversation. The Hades is fairly easy to drive, even though they are 16 ohms and 95 decibels of sensitivity. I found that they are not that hard to drive with any dongle to get them to volume, and pretty much any DAP and desktop was able to drive the Hades with ease. They did respond a little bit for the positive when using a little bit more power. I've also found that the Hades is very picky when it comes to the source presentation. Very warm sources, or even sources that had a subtle warmth tint to them, were making the Hades be very slow, sluggish, extremely warm, thick, bloated, and just not very inspiring to listen to. A more neutral and cold, sterile, analytical leaning were opened them up a little bit more and brought out a few of their abilities. Speaking of their sound abilities, how do the QKZ x HBB Hades sound? So the bass. Yeah, the Hades, they have way too much bass. This is just an insane amount of bass that is just too much. They have a very thick, bloated, flabby, muddy type of bass. It's not very controlled bass. It has a ton of quantity. It is a massive amount of bass, and it's a very powerful, just a lot of dominance. And in fact, it does dominate into the lower mids, and it does bleed there. Sadly, they have a lack of air and a lack of clarity, and the bass is just very muddy, flabby, bloated, and thick, and just does not have a lot of details and resolution. It's very much often in one note mode, and when it hits, it's not a real pleasurable hit. It doesn't have this, it has a lot of punch and slam, you're gonna feel it, but it doesn't sound proper. It has like this dull thwack to it. It doesn't have the naturalism that you would expect from a bass. And it just doesn't have really that good of tone and timbre. It's just all about the bass and not really about the quality. The mids are recessed, and they are dominated by the bass in the lower mids. There's a very thickness, a fullness to it, and it has a lot of just body, and just there's just too much bleed in the lower mids. Now the upper mids are slightly elevated, and you do get a little bit of energy and sparkle there, but there's not a whole lot. And the mids still lack air, they still lack clarity, and the tone and timbre is slightly better in the mids, but it's still not really natural sounding. Detail retrieval is still very lackluster, and resolution isn't very good. And overall, the mids just sound uninspired. It's all about the bass, and the mids are kind of left behind. And then the treble. The treble is extended very little. You do not have a lot of air. You do not have a lot of clarity in the treble. And it kind of like the mids, they're just a little bit uninspired. The tone and timbre is a little bit better, kind of like the mids were, but overall it's just not very natural sounding. The best way that I can describe how the bass, the mids, and the treble sound of the Hades is what I used to do to my dad's sound system in his car or the one at home. And that is fiddle around with the EQ. Take pretty much anything that was in the bass region and the lower mids from about 300 hertz all the way down to 20 hertz and just lift them all the way to the top. As far as they'll go, I'll just raise them all up. And then I'll take from about 300 hertz to about 2K and dip them down to about a quarter of the way from the bottom. And then take from 2K to about 10K, leave them where they are. And then take from about 10K to 15K, drop it all the way to the bottom. And then take 15K to 20K and lift it all the way to the top. And all you hear is bass and muffledness and not a lot of air and space. And my dad would get really annoyed and mad because he'd have to reset all of his sound. That's kind of the way that the Hades remind me of what they sound like. Soundstage of the Hades. It's very cramped. It's very, very small. Does not have a lot of depth, does not have a lot of width. It's a very small stage, and it's all right here. Also, the imaging of the Hades is 3 blob. It's right, center, left. Right, center, left. Herky-jerky as it goes across the stage, and there's gaps and spaces. It does not transition smoothly from side to side. You cannot follow things around very easily. Detail retrieval of the Hades is very lackluster. I was really surprised at how poorly it brings out details. There were many tracks in which I was like, there's so much more in this track, and I'm not hearing that. Just stuff that's normally heard. And then the resolution of the details is not very good. In the uppers, it's a little bit smeary and it's a little bit hazy. And then down below in the bass, it just is not controlled. It's not defined. And it's just not very focused at all the way throughout. Tone and timbre is not really that good. It doesn't really reproduce instruments very well. I found them to sound artificial and just not have a lot of inspiration to sound like their lifelike products. It just does not sound accurate like a real lifelike instrument or vocalist. Overall, the Hades is a very unnatural sounding IEM. It's all about the bass, and it's not a very good bass at that. And then the mids and the treble are just they just kind of tag along and don't have a lot of focus, and unfortunately they're not inspired to really join in. QKZ HBB Hades. If you have already pre-ordered, or if you have received them and you're trying to enhance the experience, I recommend changing the cable. The stock cable is terrible and is holding the Hades back. Now, changing cables is not going to bring you $1,000 IEM, but it may improve the experience a little bit, give you some a little bit more air space, maybe a little bit better resolution, that type of thing. Give it a try. And the only thing that may happen or that will help is changing tips. I recommend the Triclarian tip. I found that helped to bring out a little bit air and space and to help control the bass a little bit. Now, with all that being said, by changing the cable and the tips, for me, it didn't really inspire me to listen to them anymore. It really didn't improve them that much, and the Hades was still one of those IEMs that I didn't really want to listen to. The QKZ HBB Hades. It might be for you, but it is definitely not for me. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen, subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact channel, follow channel, support channel. All that kind of stuff is listed down below. Speaking of supporting the channel, I do want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you for all that you give to the channel. It's much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, please check the links down below. There's all kinds of ways that you can do it, through one-time gifts with PayPal and Venmo, or through monthly subscriptions with Patreon and YouTube memberships, where you can get access early to the videos and also access to my private Discord server. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, it'd be greatly appreciated. Also, check out the other links down below. There's all kinds of other information like gear recommendations, music recommendations, and all kinds of other things. So check out those links. Lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.